It is now 4:20, and you are listening to The Interview Show. I am Verne Andru, creator of Captain Cannabis. Over to you, Scott. Beam me up, Scotty.
Welcome back to The Interview Show. This is Scott Wood, your host, and today we're sitting with Verne Andru, who is a comic book creator of the project that he calls 420, which details the origin of his character, Captain Cannabis. So, Verne, first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about Captain Cannabis and the origin of the character?
Okay. Thank you for having me, Scott. The origin of Captain Cannabis goes back to the early days when I was doing comic books. I actually met the crew from Captain Canuck during a high school career day. Started hanging around the studio and got to know them. One of the dynamics of the studio was the creator of Captain Canuck was actually a very, how do I say it, politically correct. He was somewhat religious in his beliefs, and he insisted that those get put through into the actual comic stories themselves. So I was kind of privy to some of the backroom bantering between the actually people that were doing the work and what they had to deal with editorially.
Does this mean that Captain Cannabis wants to convert people as well?
Well, actually, the character came up as sort of a counterpoint to Captain Canuck. I was working on my chops, my drawing chops, and I needed something to be able to come in and show the guys. And I figured, well, this is a good way to get under Richard's skin. So I came up with the character Captain Cannabis, which succeeded quite well.
All right. So everybody is going to be asking, or in their heads they're thinking, all right, is this going to be a straight-up portrayal, or what are Captain Cannabis's powers? Does he cause people to get spontaneously hungry?
Well, I guess the monkeys play into it quite a bit, don't they? It gets very metaphysical. The story, as it progresses, deals with the larger journey of consciousness. I spent 5 years doing some pretty deep research into a lot of Eastern philosophies and different ideas of how life works. And one of the prevailing thoughts is that we're creatures of consciousness that bond with physical shells, which are the bodies that we use as suits of clothes during this particular manifestation. Okay, so I took a lot of that research, and when I went actually to sit down and write the story, I had notes from about 300 different books that I had to sort of correlate and work through. At the end of it all, I said, okay, well, what story really do I want to tell? I can tell just a normal superhero will go and beat up the bad guys and the hero wins the girl, or sort of deal with a bigger issue, a bigger story that hasn't really been told in mainstream media. And I decided, if you're going to do something, you might as well do it big, and this is the biggest story there is. And that basically says that the Eastern philosophy calls it a manvantara, where our consciousness will fall into matter and then go back into pure energy over a period of 8 billion years. We are now within that period, about a little beyond the halfway point, which means that, again, if those philosophies are correct, that our consciousness will start to withdraw from the physical side and move to the next layer, which is the sort of astral or metaphysical plane. So Captain Cannabis, really, Hal, who's the main character, Halbert Leiter, stumbles across some cosmic pot, which basically brings him into consciousness within that astral plane. And the story really starts to get some traction when we all exist in the astral plane during our sleep state, for example. But he's actually, through the use of this pot, able to manifest that character within the physical plane and start dealing with the bad guys here.
Cool. That's kind of a nice hook, dealing with those issues, but in a superhero context. So then, to follow up on my question, what are Captain Cannabis's powers?
Well, okay, basically anything that you can think of. In the metaphysical plane, it's whatever you want is manifested through concentrated thought. So one of the things Hal has to learn is what he thinks he's able to manifest. So whatever powers, basically it's limitless. Whatever he is able to think about and say, well, I would like some potato chips right now. If he focuses hard enough, he will be able to get those. Okay. So, in direct answer to your question, what are his powers? His powers are whatever he's able to imagine.
Let's break it down. Like Superman, okay, you can list off his powers. Batman, you can list off his powers. Spider-Man, you can list off his powers.
And Captain Cannabis, you can list off his powers. His powers are basically the powers of thought. This isn't your typical superhero story. Those are very typical superhero. I mean, Superman, he gets his power from kryptonite. Batman, he doesn't really have any powers. He's just got a whole bunch of gadgets that he's able to use. Spider-Man, but he gets stung by a radioactive spider, and he's able to, a lot of his stuff is really gadgets too. One of the differentiating characters here is those guys all work on the side of what we would consider to be the authorities, the law enforcement. This story is very iconoclastic in that I'm taking the position that what if it's the authorities that are wrong? What if what the system says is right is actually not? Doing sort of a matrix spin on it. Okay, so we've got this group of individuals that have risen to a position of power that are using the power and the system to enslave people, not for the well-being of mankind, but for their own purposes.
Okay. Interesting. So now the project itself is called 420, and you want to develop it as an animated feature, but you decided to put it out as comic books. So do you want to explain your process behind deciding to get this out there? Because it is a very transgressive, we'll say counterculture story.
Okay, what in the ultimate I'm trying to do, or I am doing, is I'm creating a feature film. I spent a lot of time in the animation industry, and film is the best medium I've found to be able to deliver an entertainment story. I've also spent time working in the comic book genre, and I am quite well aware that it's very difficult. The system isn't really designed to facilitate the funding and production of stories that are outside the politically correct spectrum. In a lot of ways, particularly in Canada, our system is designed so that we have, very mild. I mean, the stuff in the movie theaters, the reason is that it's bad is we've got a whole bunch of bureaucrats sitting in offices that are deciding, what is good entertainment. And the entertainers are the ones that are marginalized. So I'm creating a film, and because the system isn't designed to, I'm not going to get the investors to walk in and say, Captain Cannabis, that's a good idea. Mind you, some do, the ones that get it. But so I've said, okay, I don't want to, more or less because it's very difficult to go the traditional financing route. So I've said, okay, I'm doing something outside the box in terms of a story. So what can I do outside the box in terms of a financing production structure? So I said, I can write the film, I can do the artwork for the film, and get it out to the marketplace in the terms of books. So I'm doing one set of artwork as feature film layouts. Those appear on the web as webisodes at oki.com or captaincannabis.com, so people can go and follow the story in black and white. I then do a color treatment to the actual frames themselves, lay them out in a book form so that now people can buy the book as sort of self-contained chapters of the story, get the added value that it's in color, it's in a book form, it's very collectible. I've gone to great pains to make sure that it's printed to the best quality available. And the monies from the book actually become the funding for the film. So if you want to see good entertainment, this is like a freeware or shareware way to do it. You can belly up, buy the book, it's $9.95. Those proceeds go into making the next book. By the time I've got all 13 books done, then I've got all of the artwork ready to get the film happening. Hello, it is now 4:20, and you're with Verne Andru, creator of Captain Cannabis, and listening to the interview show.
Okay, so there's one question that I wanted to ask you, because the project is called 420, and 420 within the cannabis culture is a term that is that a lot of people feel a strong group ownership to. So I just wanted to ask you what your feelings were relating to that.
Okay. The story was originally called, the working title was The Strange Attractor, which is more a reference to Oki, and that will make sense as the story progresses. But I took the screenplay up to a group called Praxis and paid them to do a professional read on it, and they sort of had some questions about whether or not that made sense, which made me rethink, and I said, okay, I need a good, catchy name for the story. So I was going through some of my papers, and as I discussed about the whole Captain Canuck era of my early comic book years, I created the character Captain Cannabis. Well, I took that one step further and actually sent it in to the Canadian Copyright Office, and they sent me back an official Canadian copyright certificate for the character Captain Cannabis, which I then duly filed away and proceeded with my life. So one of the things I was doing after I'd finished the screenplay and I was trying to think of a name, is I was sorting through some papers and I came across this copyright certificate. Now, just to back up a little bit, I grew up in the 50s and the 60s and the early 70s and sort of went a separate way and wasn't part of the culture for, the 80s and the 90s. I met up with this fellow and did some work designing a guitar pedal for him, and he's quite a bit younger. He's in his 20s. And he would say it's 4:20 time. And I'd say, well, no, it's not. It's like 1:30. And so he explained to me about this whole 4:20 thing, and it was really the first that I'd heard of it. So I'm going through my paper and I find this copyright certificate, and I took a look at the date, and it's dated April 20th, 1977. And this light bulb just went over my head, and I said to myself, this is the earliest documented cross-reference between 420, being April 20th, and Cannabis, because it's a Captain Cannabis copyright certificate dated April 20th. So I figured if anybody had a right to use it,
at this point I think we should cue the eerie synergy music.
Yeah, I think I have the right. I'm not taking ownership for it. I'm saying point blank, I had no idea that 420 had any reference to anything other than a time of day until into the 2000s, and I know now that it's been part of popular culture for at least 20 years. But it certainly fits with the story, it fits with Hal, and hopefully it fits with you people in the 420 culture where you can actually come and check out the story because it's good stuff.
Absolutely. Now, throughout the show I'm going to be playing some music that you've done, so do you want to tell the audience a little bit about that?
Oh, okay. One of the songs, Open Your Mind, actually I created as a it was a bass riff that I did, and as I was playing it, I said, this would probably work pretty good with lyrics. Now, I'm not a singer, but I sat down and the lyrics, basically, they flowed out. They just, in about 5 minutes from start to finish, I had the lyrics for the song. But I can't sing. So I found somebody had actually taken the software program in Mr. Speak and Spell and made a plug-in version of that ran on the computer. So I typed in the lyrics to the song, and I have Mr. Speak and Spell coming out and actually singing it, and I'm able to change the pitch and vary it so it sounds like there's some female and some male speak and spell. But it's very eerie, and it works quite well. It's got sort of a dance drone to it, and it's been downloaded quite a bit off the site. It's quite a popular little tune.
Well, thank you very much for speaking with us today, Verne. First of all, I'll say last, to end things, do you want to tell everyone where they can get in contact with Captain Cannabis and his materials?
Yeah. The books themselves, as I say, they're available from Amazon.com if you want to order by credit card. You can do a search on Verne Andru, A-N-D-R-U, or just 420, and it should come up. If you're in the Vancouver area, the BC Marijuana Party's bookstore has got them. Does Your Mother Know is a magazine store on 4th Avenue, the comic shop on 4th, RX Comics, if you're into music, Zulu Records has some, and High End has them as well. Any one of those people. Or you can go to the website. There's www.oki.com, that's O-K-E-E, That's the main site. Oki is the little alien that brings hell, the cosmic pot. So that's where that comes in. And you could also go to CaptainCannabis.com, which is basically the same website with a different skin on it. They'll have links to some of these places where you can buy them, or you can actually buy the books off of the website, but I can't sell through credit cards. So if you want credit cards, Amazon.com. If you're okay with a money order, then my websites will work.
Well, thank you very much for talking with us today, and good luck with the project.
Thank you so much, Scott. Good morning or good afternoon, whatever is appropriate. I am Verne Andru, creator of Captain Cannabis, and you are listening to the interview show with Mr. Scott. It is now 4:20.
Your life is just for the dead. Whether on your pressure or at your method. You sleeping outside or eagerly fed. For your life is just lifestyle you can't withstand. Come on. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close your eyes, open your eyes. Close your eyes, close your eyes. Close your eyes, open your eyes. Over your eyes. What they better and told or road to that side. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Open your eyes. Oh, that method is turned upside down. Your concept is lost and cannot be found. Close your eyes. Close your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes. Close your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes. You bottle can sleep for you know no other. What you work so hard for, guys, your bed might get leaving you so empty, so rough and with butter. Close your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes. your eyes to open your life. Good as idea, purely and your life can abound. You are one with each other and all your same life. Open your life to the truth all around. Open your life, open your life, open your life, open your life, open your life to the truth all around. Open your life.